I guess kicking this off the best way possible, and this is a overarching theme. Well, I guess, Ian, I always hit the microphone, man, every time. What do you know about the podcast so far?
What do I know
from what you've seen, right? Like what's your what kind of vibe are you getting from what we're trying to do here? Just off the cuff.
We're trying to you are trying to.
No, it's we. It's collective. Yeah.
Talk some sense into the industry that we so beloved.
That's correct.
We work with a lot of really cool technology, a lot of really smart people that are trying to accomplish important missions.
Yeah.
Using the lever of automation. And I think one of the unfortunate side effects of automation is it makes everything look easy and simple.
Yeah.
And when you bring in people into the conversation that aren't used to it, things like scope creep become almost immediate. And, I would say scope creep has destroyed more projects than budgets ever have, just great ideas that would be a good idea, but we got to write it on a board somewhere and have that be a continuous improvement project after the fact, or maybe Rev B down the road.
Yeah.
So I think when I look at what you're trying to do here is, a lot of what I do in my day-to-day is just trying to speak reason into the conversation, come into a situation of chaos where automation is the solution or our experience is the solution, and try to breathe reason into it. I mean, I started my career as a process engineer.
Yeah.
So I'm very familiar with the change management and the actual journey of like deciding to automate something and managing that project from idea to delivery. And now that I'm on more of the consulting side of things, what I witness is basically managing those projects, managing expectations, managing scope.
Yeah.
Are where a lot of projects go awry. And when I look at what you guys discuss on the podcast and what we're hopefully going to talk about today, I see an opportunity to, speak to the business owner, the person whose personal finances are on the line when they're talking about automation, to speak to the business owner who is interested in, bringing manufacturing back to America or making manufacturing in America make sense again.
Yeah.
And hopefully helping guide them through the journey of, okay, we know automation plays a role in our future, but how do I procure those systems and install them and manage the conversion of my processes over to them without going bankrupt in the process?
Yeah. No, man, that's pretty spot on, right? Like, the name and the theme of Stop the Madness doesn't stop with just, let's say, maintenance and reliability here, right? Like it's part of my goal through this podcast is to capture end-to-end, let's say, manufacturing or asset management, if you will, especially in complex industries or asset-intense industries. And so what all do we have to do to be good stewards to them? But also, like you said, like how do we not break the bank but be successful and not necessarily do more with less, but how do we do things the right way and be rooted in truth and reason, not necessarily pie in the sky type ideas, right? So you're hitting on it, man. And so while we were, smoking and joking, as they say, before we hit the record button, Trent mentioned it, right? It's funny. We all were walking into this wanting to talk about the same thing, and we didn't even really realize it, which I think is hilarious. But I want to kick it off with part of that of, we were discussing, I guess you could say tier 1 suppliers or even tier 2 suppliers need to be able to manufacture better components to make the tier 1 OEM a better product, so to speak, whether it's a vehicle or whatever's being built. And that kind of ties back to a little bit of reliability in automation or with automation, right? So I guess my first question to you, and Trent, obviously feel free to dive in on this one too. From like a 30,000-foot view, where are we seeing things, I don't want to say going wrong, but what are the most common problems that are walking into or people are walking into with automation, right?
I would say off the rip, a lot of organizations see automation as easy.
It's an easy button?
Yeah, I would say it's simple. I mean, it can be simple, done properly, but we'll take RFID, for example. It's very simple technology. We use it every day. And at face value, you're at a trade show, you see an RFID demo, You're like, oh, I could put that on all my products in my warehouse, and I could track all my stuff in real time in my warehouse. Very simple. But when you go to actually implement that, all of a sudden the project gets much more complicated. It's not impossible, but it requires much more work than it appears at first.
Yeah.
So when I look at most automation-related projects, that's what I see happening is there's a gross misunderstanding of what it takes to actually arrive at the finished product. So much so that you talk about pie in the sky. I feel like in the Lean Six Sigma world, there's the topic of entitlement. Mm-hmm. It's like when you're talking about what your goals, right? Your entitlement is like if you had godlike power and there were nothing in your way, how many parts per hour could you make, or what level of quality could you achieve, or whatever. That's your entitlement, and then your actual goal is something in between where you are and that, right? Understanding that you can never really get to perfect, but you need to define what ideal would be so you know where your goal should be and know what you actually achieve with the project is viable. And I think in the automation space, people try to go straight for the World Series. Yeah. Not understanding that there's a whole season to be played in between that, and you have to build up to that. Up to and including what we were talking about in the lobby, where sometimes before you even talk automation, you should be looking at your inputs and making sure your process even makes sense for automation, or your inputs are either formatted or presented in a way that can be automated or makes sense to automate.
Well, I want to go down that rabbit hole of what are a couple of things that do make sense. I say to automate, and what are a couple of things that don't make sense to automate. I'm coming at this from a perspective of a lens of I think my viewers know, and you guys know, like I'm not an automation builder. I know enough about it to be dangerous. I've seen it in action, all well and good, but I don't understand, right, what do we automate, what do we not automate, and then what are the complexities that help us get to the decision of like, yes, we need to automate this because of X, Y, Z reason, or the opposite of like, no, that's just stupid. We're not going to do that, right? So I want to take a beat down that path to hopefully educate myself, but maybe somebody else will be educated in the process.
So the question is, what makes sense to automate?
Yeah, I guess we don't have to do perfect world scenario, but just a recent experience where you're like, yes, this was a situation and this actually made sense as to automating this process or this whatever. I mean, you chime in on that.
I think it's important to really call out, and I've said this before, that not every problem that you have requires an automation solution. Mm-hmm. Automation, in order to maintain your ROI and to not blow a bunch of capital, is something that you should do later. Your process optimization and eliminating the waste should be prerequisites before we decide to automate. And then whenever you get to that point, you have to partner with the right automation partners who have been there and who have been in the trenches and have seen it, who can advise you on the right automation design choices, somebody like Ian.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people alive can remember a time before a copy machine was a standard item in every office. But
right, yeah.
If you think about what life was like before the invention of a reliable copy machine, basically everything had to be done one by one, right? Mm-hmm. Or you had to create a form, the negative on the old school printing machines or whatever. But when you look at just the modern printer, it's fully automated now, but there's still inputs required by the user. The paper is presented to the machine in a very specific way, right? The entire paper industry had to be retooled to allow the paper to come in a very precise shape and size and thickness and uniformity. Obviously the data that's supplied to the machine and the way it's supplied and the format that it comes in. The copy machine automates the replication of data, you might say, on a piece of paper. But when you step back, you realize there's a lot that went into even setting up the inputs, just the paper and the ink and the data in a way that could even be presented to the machine that can then make a print. And I would say that's pretty much all automated projects. Everyone goes straight for making the copy machine and completely ignore the fact that their paper comes in 14 different shapes, colors, and sizes. Yeah. Their ink is inconsistent and is unreliable. And by the way, there's 3 different colors. You have 3 different suppliers, and all 3 of them are supplying you 3 different. You can't tell unless you put them side by side. Yeah. And they usually come in lots, and so you're only running one at a time. But if you actually took samples from all 3 and put them side by side, you realize you're getting 3 different parts from 3 different suppliers.
Yeah.
So that would be really my answer to your question is to make it a metaphor would be, in everywhere I go, I mean, there's great organizations with a ton of really smart people trying to solve problems. The problem is without proper leadership and guidance on what to work on and how to divvy up the different tasks of a project, everyone kind of works in a silo. And in the end, the project ends up being, at best, like a fraction of what the intention was.
Yeah.
And at worst, I mean, projects fail all the time, and organizations struggle. People lose their jobs. I mean, that's obviously more of the worst case scenario. But it all comes down to me to leadership and having a captain at the helm who can see the vision of where the organization wants to go and can break it down into smaller pieces for the team. So break it down into smaller pieces so the team can work on it, and then that person can keep the team on task and know where they are along the way. So maybe we'll just call it VP whatever answers directly to CEO or whatever, right? And hey, this is our vision. I want you to go and execute this vision. Okay. And as a team, you drop a 5-year plan. In 5 years, we're going to go from here to here. And then all the CEO and the board of directors cares about is the progress along that path. I need 5 years. Here's my budget, blah, blah, blah. And then that individual turns and runs a team of people, and they break that project down yet again into different teams that are accomplishing the mission. Step 1 is often working on the inputs. You're not automating anything. Year 1 looks boring because all you're doing is rearranging your inputs. You're rearranging your floor. You're cleaning things up. You're tidying things up. You're 5S'ing. You're doing just basic lean activities just to get your line to look like it should. And then maybe during that time you're having conversations with your automation partners that you're helping. You're using those activities to show them where you are, but you're and you make sure they're aware of your vision of where you're going to adjust. And they might consult on how you might rearrange some things a certain way to say make it easier to pick or whatever. And then year 2 is where you might start kicking off some simple material handling. Maybe you start with conveyance. A lot of people think, robots solve everything, but it's amazing what you can do with a conveyor.
Yeah.
Present a part to an operator every 6 seconds and watch what happens to your throughput, right?
Yeah.
Just give them, hey, every 6 seconds you need to do your thing, or every 19 seconds, whatever it is, but make it every 19 seconds, every single time, no matter what, and replace all the stops and pauses and the hum and haws, right? So that's what I would say is what I see consistently across, and I've done this across the country. I've pretty much not every state, but every time zone in our country. I've done this business. And I've worked on projects, and I feel like that's a consistency I see across the board. And the problem is just to flip the coin and go the other direction. So everything I've talked about is top down, right? So the management kind of pushing the vision down the organization and getting everyone rowing in the same direction, working on the same projects or different projects for the same end goal. Is going upstream. Is management needs to have an understanding of what they're asking their teams to do.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily need to be involved in the nitty-gritty, but they need to understand what their team is working on and what the technical hurdles are and leverage their resources. Because a lot of times the folks at the top of the food chain are there for a reason. They do have resources. They have access to things that normal people don't, right?
Yeah.
So if when I've seen senior leadership invest their time into understanding where their money is going, I've also witnessed them find levers that no one else would have ever noticed were available. And basically they can come and give some superpowers to the team or bring in some expert that they golfed with 2 years ago that happens to be the world's leading expert on this and is willing to do this for free because they just love the industry or they're you pay for their hotel and they'll show up for a week and spread their wisdom on you. So I would say going the other direction, management needs to invest and not just say, we have a project going, everything must be fine. It needs to go both directions, and both leadership teams need to be invested in each other's success.
Yeah. Dude, that's dropping some hot bombs. I love it.
I see a lot of people mistake automation and think it's the same thing as reliability. They think we're going to turn this into a robot cell. And we're going to have a reliable process.
And the robot will never break, ever.
Right. Don't even order any spares. Don't need to waste money on the spares. But the biggest enemy of reliability is variability.
Yeah.
So if you don't fix all these variables or minimize the variables.
Yeah.
No amount of automation. Well, I say that, but you're going to spend millions and millions of dollars to overcome these variables in your process. And if you want this leader at the helm to lead this charge, why are we doing all these projects? To increase our capacity.
Yeah.
And the number one way to increase your capacity is to maximize the amount of clarity that your team has. Mm-hmm. If you don't know what problem you're trying to solve, then you're just going to get sold a lot of parts.
Dude, so 2 things. First, when you were talking about the copier, the entire time you were talking, the only thing I could think about was Office Space and then just beating the shit out of that copier. PC load letter. So I had to share that. But the second thing is, I think I've told you about this. I want to tell you about this too, Ian, and we can kind of armchair QB this scenario. I recently witnessed in a manufacturing plant. So they, how do I describe this without giving it away?
And a plant far, far away.
Yeah, a galaxy far, far away, a long time ago. So this plant runs multiple lines of, this part of it is packaging. All right, so it's mostly automated, is on the packaging side, right? So they bought it successfully. They bought this piece of automated equipment to package their product in various container sizes, all in one machine. And so as we were doing the plant tour, I guess you can call him the asset manager. Anyway, he showed us this machine and he said, "This thing looks new, right?" Where I was like, "Yeah, this thing looks brand new." He's like, "Yeah, it looks good, doesn't it?" I said, "Sure, yeah, it looks cool. It's got some cool lights on it." He's like, "This thing's been installed on my floor for the last 3 years and we haven't turned it on once." And I was like, "Oh, well, tell me more." So, like I said earlier, multiple, I guess, outputs and sizes in what they're packaging. And so first off, when they installed the piece of equipment, they didn't align it. So the conveyance system was not only uneven, but it was causing the bags to fall off and do other weird things. So like they were trying to fix the alignment. But the other component was they did not have a good process on how they were going to seal the bag once the amount has been dumped into, let's say if they're running an 8-ounce bag versus a 16-ounce versus a 24-ounce. They did not have a good process on how they were not only going to seal the bag, but when was it time to turn the lever for different fill amounts based off of whatever they were putting in the bag. And they couldn't figure it out. They just couldn't figure out how to get this dang thing to run. And they spent $5 million on this one piece of equipment. And they had already mothballed the previous piece of equipment that was only doing a couple different variation sizes, but they wanted like a 5-in-1, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say a 5 8-in-1. And so they couldn't figure it out. And so he was telling me the OEM said just yes the whole time. Just said yes. And then COVID brought some delays to the installation, but even once they got it installed, they told the OEM hey, this thing isn't working like we wanted it to. And I think here's where scope creep came in, and the OEM was like, well, that wasn't in the original agreement, whatever. And so anyway, it took 3.5 years, and the OEM said, we're done. We're not touching this thing anymore. This is your problem. Mm-hmm. Y'all need to figure it out. And he said, this is the bane of my existence because somehow this has turned into a maintenance problem. Mm-hmm. This isn't – somehow engineering has said this is a maintenance problem. Operations said the same thing, which that goes back to a previous talk track of this whole it's not my job epidemic is just – God, so frustrating. So anyway, he said, yeah, and we can't figure out how to make this thing work. And I've got 3 more sitting in the loading dock. And I've been told we can't install those until we figure out how to make this one work. And we're 3 years into figuring out how to try to make this thing work. So I guess I say that story goes to show, right? You're talking about a clear drive in leadership. In my mind, I'm looking at, engineering is trying to tell the OEM what do we need it to do, and probably haven't even thought about what are the processes to filling different sized bags and sealing them appropriately, right? And making sure we're hitting that quality mark every single notch. It sounds like to me this project was we need a 5-in-1 machine, go build it. And then the OEM said, okay. And then they got paid at the end of the day and said, well, this is y'all's problem. Y'all weren't clear enough. But anyway, I found that to be crazy because if we're just assuming in what they've spent in buying the equipment, they're already $15 million out of the hole just in the equipment. But that's not to include, strain or downtime because they can't now produce all of these units as quickly as they need to, or insert XYZ other components to this. And so that was probably my first exposure to a piece of automation that failed miserably.
I mean, it happens more often than anybody.
Oh, I'm
wants to
sure,
admit.
right?
I would imagine if we were to, investigate that further, we would probably find that early on in the project there was a misalignment on, at the very best, a misalignment on scope. Because it was this happens a lot of times. An inexperienced end user, the customer, comes to a machine builder and asks for a result.
Yeah.
Not knowing what information and data is needed to achieve that. And so the machine builder they run a business, they're trying to make money, they have an opportunity in front of them, they're going to say yes, but they do need certain information and data in order to be successful. And without the data, they're shooting in the dark largely. And again, a lot of these organizations, it's like if we just look at the way that these machines are typically sold, somehow whoever the leader of this organization was found their way to sit in front of a salesperson for this machine builder, who sold them, who gathered the data, went back to their team, spent probably a week or two developing a rough proposal, rough budgetary quote, with a general idea of how they would do it. A machine looks like this, uses these devices, it costs roughly this, plus or minus 10%, boom. And that they got them to agree, yeah, well, we'll buy them. We'll buy 3 of them, great. And then they proceeded to actually deliver on it, and the customer likely did not have the ability to provide the information necessary. And I would argue, if you dug in even deeper, the inputs are probably very inconsistent.
Yeah.
It becomes a finger pointing problem very quickly because of what we were talking about before. You're going from 0 to hero without anything in between, and the machine builder at the end of the day is only responsible for delivering a machine.
Yeah.
And I bet you if you were to take the inputs that they were supplied as they were supplied, put them in the machine, I bet you it makes boxes and stuff just fine. As you start to run actual production, which is boxes coming in off the dock, temperature, humidity, whatever's, maybe they're stored outside, maybe they're whatever the difference is, a bunch of static electricity and, whatever. There's all kinds of nuances that one way or another nobody took into account when they were developing the machine, which is what leads Trent and I to talk the way we do, because we've all been there. We both probably brought in something and didn't think of something, and had to work through it. We solved it. We're thrifty and we have great teams around us. But at first you're like, oh no, I should have measured that,
Yeah.
But when you take that to the next level, to a full size machine, the problem is that you have a machine builder typically is selling and talking directly to an engineering manager, maybe a maintenance manager, technician with an idea, an organization. They're selling the entire vision to that individual, who then has to go and sell that up the food chain to their management. If they get approved, now it's on that person to deliver the project, and everybody's just standing around waiting for them to do it so they can join in on taking credit for it, if it goes well.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Right? That's just corporate America. That's the way that's humanity, really. But again, the issue is that the mission critical information is being filtered through 3 layers before it gets to the decision makers. And then the decision makers' expectations are being filtered through those same 3 layers back to the OEM. So the people that actually whose opinion really matters aren't even talking to each other.
Yeah.
So one of my ambitions with what I do, you guys are aware of the happy hour and all these other things, is one of the ambitions that I've had for many years is to find a way to cut out, not to say cut out the middleman, those middlemen exist for project purposes, for the actual tasks. But in a project, I believe you need a flat leadership structure with a few key stakeholders, key leaders who are responsible and accountable for different things. And I distinguish accountability from responsibility as such. And I feel like in order for these projects to really be successful, you need to have a almost like a board of directors for the project, each of which is responsible for and accountable for their various pieces. and there needs to be a continuous flow of information long before anyone breaks ground or cuts a hole in the ground or start. You know what I mean? Like there needs to be a continuous conversation, and once the scope is defined. And it needs to be defined before anybody spends any money on anything, other than maybe a few flights and hotels for site surveys or whatever. Once that scope is defined, it needs to be signed by every stakeholder and agreed upon, and it needs to be adhered to. Any changes that need to occur post, like halfway through the project, it'd be nice if it did.
Yeah.
You create a place to store those ideas.
Yeah.
Where everybody sees it, and you save those for later.
Yeah.
Like that's a great idea. But we need to finish what we started.
Yeah.
The way we started, the way we agreed would be ideal.
Yeah.
Because like what was it? Churchill always says, a good plan violently executed today is better than a perfect plan executed next week.
Yeah.
Might have been Patton actually that said that, but whatever. Like someone old and important.
Yeah.
Anyway, so. I feel like it all comes down to leadership more than the stuff. Like Trent and I can sit here and we could put 5 different photo eyes on this table from 5 different manufacturers. And at the end of the day, anybody in our game doesn't give a shit what color it is. They all do the same thing. They all have buttons in different spots. And if you take 15 minutes, you can learn all 5 of them and how to program them. And they all do the same thing. What matters is the result, right? And so I would say that the same thing for most machines. I mean, 95% of what the machine is doing has been done 1,000 times before.
Yeah.
The nuance of exactly what you're picking up, the weight of it, the size of it, the material, whatever intrinsically safe requirement, whatever the goofy thing is like 5% of the project, and that should be where everybody spends their energy getting it right.
Yeah.
Everything else should be rinse and repeat, right? For the people participating in the project. And if it's not, then there's something out of place, and the project needs to be paused. That needs to be solved before the project continues.
Yeah, wow. I think what both you guys are talking about is something that I call the cycle of doom.
Yeah.
A lot of projects, unfortunately, they'll start with ambiguity. People have a problem and they're not really sure what all their inputs are, and they delegate that off and send it to the integrator and say, hey, here's my problem, solve it, figure it out. And they'll give you a quote, and they're going to spend every dollar of that. And that leads to poor design decisions.
Yeah.
Those lead to hidden defects. And then you have this rinse and repeat cycle that creates firefighting in your organization and burnout, and everybody wonders, why can't we get it together? Well, it's not because procurement doesn't know what they're buying. It's not because engineering doesn't know what they're doing. It's not because the technicians aren't competent enough. It's because at the beginning in the discovery, like you were talking about, we didn't properly define what the project needs to solve.
Yeah. So, man, it's so powerful. It's like the last – what episode has this been? Is this 7 or 8? Don't know? Don't matter. I know I'm calling you on the spot. It don't matter. Every episode we've done so far has came back to the root of some of this madness. It kind of begins and ends with leadership, right? Like who's not only leading the project, but are we defining what the end goal in mind is, and how do we make it all work in between? So I find that very interesting. At the beginning, when we kicked this thing off, we were talking about, our, let's say, suppliers need to be able to make better parts for the OEM or whoever's consuming them for their operations. I want to get into that a little bit because I've had a little bit of an epiphany just sitting here of, somebody that manufacturers, let's just say bearings. I feel like we all talk about bearings and pumps. It's the most generic thing out there, right? But whoever's manufacturing bearings, right, no matter where that's going to, whether it's a pump in a factory or a pump on a cruise ship, right? If it's going on a critical piece of equipment and then that thing fails, the chain of, let's say, oh shit, that happens isn't just at the piece of equipment where it failed. Like it now boils down to like, okay, is the supplier actually giving us something good? Like, where's the quality defect in this? They told me it was going to last longer or it was going to do this. And I imagine, especially for, let's say, just bearing manufacturing, like automation comes into a huge play into this, right, of the quality level of the product that comes out. So I guess my question is, or topic for discussion on this piece is like, how do we get the manufacturers of these components, smaller components, to just be better every day. That has the ripple effect of making the people that they supply these parts to who sell them better, who ultimately put them in vehicles, boats, machine floors, whatever. Like how do we help enable the bottom line to be better so it ripples all the way up to the top, right? Like where does it begin? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it starts with understanding the difference between precision and accuracy. So when you're teaching someone how to shoot for the first time, it's better to have them miss consistently. Like let's say they're aiming dead center on the target and they're missing bottom left every single time. Their pattern is
they've got a good grouping.
Few inches across.
Yeah.
But they're way off center because anyone who knows how to shoot can say, okay, I can fix that.
Yeah.
Like there's mechanical changes that can be made to the individual, their setup, and or the device they're using that can get them to square. But if they're all over the place, you don't know where to start, right?
Yeah.
And I think when I look at if you have a manufacturer that's consistently missing the same way every time, any sane person can look at that. Okay, let's create projects to find where we're missing, and we'll slowly bring that grouping into center. Mm-hmm. If you have a supplier who's all over the place, the parts are very inconsistent, and you have no rhyme or reason to it. I would say that's a much more challenging problem to overcome because you can't define the problem. I would say each one of those is a case have to be handled in a case by case scenario. But I think it is also important to note there's nothing evil about firing a customer.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing wrong with that because sometimes like relationships, especially in business that existed 20 years ago, may not necessarily be symbiotic or helpful now.
Yeah.
And so if you have a partner that has been a supplier for 20 years and they've done a great job, but for the last 5, you're constantly spending, human capital trying to babysit their performance.
Yeah.
I mean, you can help them, you can invest in them, sit them down and have conversations about, just like you would an employee who's not performing, an action plan, how to improve. But if that organization has lost its center or has lost its ability to produce consistent results, then that's a performance conversation that needs to be had. And I think a lot of, again, like leaders and senior leaders, at least in the American manufacturing that I've interacted with, don't have the guts to actually have those tough conversations. And so they just continue to have their teams babysit these organizations until it blows up. Instead of dealing with it in a respectful manner where it's like, hey, we appreciate what you've done. Like, here's the action plan. They give them 6 months. You work through it as a team, and no improvements are made, and you slowly create a process to exit for each other. And all along, you're spinning up another supplier down the road.
Yeah.
But what I found, though, is that's obviously like the worst case scenario. But what I found is a lot of times, maybe the tool they're using is 15 years old. They're supposed to be replaced every 5. You're on year 15, and it has like 4 times the number of cycles on it that it's rated for.
Yeah.
So all along, like, of course they can't make consistent parts because the tooling has been expired for, a decade, and the tool's owned by the customer. So the manufacturer just keeps making parts and just charges them a surcharge for waste.
Yeah.
Like that's very, very common in the industry. And the question is, like, who, like, the problem is it always blows up, and that's when people are trying to solve it all of a sudden. But when the tool first gets out of spec, who is alerting the customer to the fact that their tool is no longer in spec, and basically letting them know, hey, beyond this scrap rate, we're no longer going to be making parts with your tool.
Yeah.
So if you want us to continue producing parts for you, we need you to invest in a new tool, and we're happy to guide you through that journey and make sure the new tool is up to speed and has all the newest technologies in it. Because if you don't do that, then 5 years down the road, you've been making nothing but junk, and if you do the math, you've been losing money on every single part you shipped out the door, i.e. supplier.
Yeah.
You've actually been losing money the whole time. You just don't know it. And when it comes to a head, now you don't have the equity. You don't have the relationship with the customer to ask for a $250,000 tool.
Yeah.
And if I was the customer in that situation, shame on me for not recognizing it earlier. But if I was in that scenario, I would be spinning up just another supplier on the side, get them up and running, and then slowly ramp down my orders with original and ramp up my orders with other. Like that's really, those are your two options. And I would say if you want to talk about carrots and switches, for me, that leads with a carrot. Like, hey, we want to continue doing business with you. We want to continue buying from you. You've been a great supplier for years. Here's the KPIs that matter. Here's where you guys are falling in that. We need you up here. What do you need to get there?
Yeah,
You know,
it's crazy.
So
I mean, honest conversation, right? That's it goes a lot further than you think. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
You were on a heater there.
I feel like it's you know, in business there's partnerships and there's relationships. Like partners,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily have to be best friends with your partners, right? I mean, I know many business owners that hate each other,
Yeah.
but they you know, Steve is a genius in marketing and Jeff is a genius in operations and my CTO, there's like, I hate his guts and he drinks too much and he cusses too much. But damn it, nobody knows finance better than that guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but they have their little board and they keep each other wealthy and they keep, you know, doing their thing. And I feel like in business, like if a relationship doesn't feel win-win on both sides, it's not a partnership. And I feel like, and when you're talking about improving supplier quality overall at a macro level, you know, there needs to be a fundamental shift in the way that, you know, our senior leaders view those inputs. Like, someone once told me that manufacturing is the only business where everything is an expense. I don't know if I captured that correctly, but basically in manufacturing, literally every single human being and every single piece of equipment is an expense for the business that's selling the product.
Yeah.
And so, like, unfortunately, you know, if you look at the way that businesses are measured and operated, that's a problem because every single thing is just costing money. And if those things fall out of like expectations, a lot of business owners, a lot of people that get an MBA and learn how to run a business or run businesses, they know how to keep things between the guardrails and how to make money and do that. But as soon as anything gets out of whack, they have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
Because it's like, there's no book on it, or it's not taught like what to do when things break, or when all of a sudden your $5 million machine doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna have to spend some money that you weren't planning on spending. Like there's no way around it. So I think I don't know how to solve that one. You talk to like you know Vanderbilt or something about their MBA program or something, but like basically we have to educate business managers and owners on again what their teams are working on, and like at least at a high level what things cost and what it takes to get things done, and what the life expectancy of a typical machine should be.
Yeah.
And so at least they can say, is this a normal thing I'm seeing? Like it's a 100-year-old machine that's all of a sudden shit in the bed. Okay, that's pretty typical. Is it a 2-year machine or a 3-year-old machine that's never run apart? That's a problem.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it goes both ways. I don't want to finger point it's just because the people don't show up to work every day. Well, in my experience, people love showing up to work and they love doing a good job. If they show up to work every day and everything they make is shit because the tools they have and the equipment they have and the team they work with treats them like shit and doesn't give a fuck, like that is why they don't show up to work every day. Yeah. But I've also worked for organizations that in the same town with the same type of people, the same talent base, that absolutely kill it. Everybody loves coming to work. No one's ever late. They don't have to have a tardy policy because people show up. If they're late, it's for a legitimate reason and no one gives a shit. Like, and they produce parts. They're a debt-free company. They cash flow. No one's mad. They have great Christmas parties. Like, how is that possible? Everyone complains that there's no good labor. They can't find people to work. Yet there are companies in this town right now that have no problem with that. It's because of the way they run their business. And I feel like that's what's lacking in manufacturing in America is it's take, and there's no give, and it's not a team mentality. I think the private equity game is kind of, I don't want to say they're messing it up because in a lot of ways they're necessary. I don't want to it's a necessary thing. Like we need people to invest in the business. Yeah. But when you invest in buying a manufacturing company, you need people to run it who know something about manufacturing. You can't just bring in some MBA from Manhattan or wherever and expect them to understand the nuances of what they're running. So anyway, whatever that translates to, and someone can say that better than me, but like those are things I see consistently between organizations. And when you talk supplier quality, like from a managerial standpoint, I feel like there's a significant disconnect between the people making the product, like the guys on the floor actually doing stuff, including maintaining it and engineering machines to build it, and the people at the top who are saying, "Where's my stuff? Yeah. And why aren't we running? Like, why aren't we making parts? Yada, yada, yada." And I think solving that combined with end users holding their suppliers accountable and being willing to invest in other suppliers and like spin up a new one while, you know, if the old one's not delivering, like basically treating your inputs as gold.
Yeah.
And each individual input, no matter how insignificant, is essential. Look, okay, machine build, right? How many machines, how many installs? Everyone listening to this has probably had a machine come in, and for some reason it's late for FAT because of a cable or a sensor or some, the fork truck hit the corner of the enclosure, now it's bent, and like some bullshit reason you can't run. But we've all found ways around it, right? So even the smallest input, be it a cable or connector or whatever, is important. And the people who manage those inputs need to have that ownership of the results of those inputs, such that the suppliers feel like they're held accountable, but they're also supported.
Yeah.
It's not a gimme. It's, hey, like, we're a partnership. I need you to make parts so that I can make my final product. So let's work as a team to figure out what your organization needs to get you there. And if that it evolves to the point where it can't be done, then tough conversations need to be had. And I think that's one element that I noticed missing around town.
Yeah. That's great. What do you got on that?
So I think we're at a critical point with a lot of manufacturing coming back to the U.S. The need for strong technical leadership is greater than it's ever been before.
Yeah.
So being able to have those hard conversations with your suppliers, with your vendors, is something that is an essential skill that not a lot of people are taught. I mean, you go get an MBA and you spend $30,000 and you don't know a lot more than you did when you went in, maybe, about manufacturing. But being able to have those conversations and saying, here is what is affecting my throughput, here's what's affecting my total asset life cycle cost, being able to communicate those things is critical. And I think a lot of manufacturers don't necessarily know that they should be investing in their technical workforce to develop those people into leaders so they can make better decisions for the business.
Yeah.
And we'll be outsourcing our leadership to someone who has more of a traditional leadership education,
Sure.
but maybe not boots on the ground experience.
Yeah.
You bring up a really good. Oh,
No,
sorry.
you're good.
So you bring up a really good point, though. When I hear my grandpa, my mom and dad, and whatever, all the old timers in my world, whatever you want to call that group, just talk about when they were young. Every one of them talks about apprenticeships, and when they graduated high school, college wasn't in the cards for them. It's too expensive, whatever, too far away, and so they went to a company. And I mean, there's companies in this town. I won't name them I don't want to get in trouble or whatever. But like, there's big companies in America that built themselves to where they are today because they would take nobodies straight out of school, and they would teach them how to do something that was essential for their purposes, and in the process, give that person a way to provide for their family for a career, 20, 30 years or whatever. And when I look at that generation, they all have these trades. Some of them are nuanced. Like some of them are like very niche trades, but they've been able to work a good living and raise a family and have a decent gainful life doing the thing they learned when they were 19 years old straight out of high school back in the 60s or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's one thing that everyone has forgotten. Like, and let me finish that with that same generation looks at me and my generation and tells us we're all pieces of shit and we don't want to work. And I'm like, okay, yes, some of us are turds, but y'all, well, number one, y'all raised us. So, like that's, joke's on you. Two, you guys had things, and they still exist, but they're shells of what they used to be, right? They're like a last resort. Mm-hmm. Like, my kids, they're 35, still living in the house. I got to get them to go do something. All right, go do this apprenticeship program. Like, it's this last resort, and it's always like this afterthought, as if like it's not sufficient, and all the trades fit into that same bucket. But it's like, why is talking about being a plumber, a welder, a carpenter, an electrician viewed as inferior to having a degree in something and being broke in our our generation's case? Like, why is it so bad? So I feel like on your front, if you're a large corporation and you're complaining that you can't find talent, they're everywhere. They just don't know anything. Yeah. So come up with a strategy. Again, projects, right? Leadership. It's like, come up with a strategy. Say, all right, we need 15 train maintenance techs. We have 3 good ones that we trust. Mm-hmm. All right, guess what? You 3 are now job captains. You're freaking coaches. Yeah. I'm going to go out and hire each of you a crew, and you're going to basically be your little Yoda or whatever. You're going to teach them how to do stuff, and then you're going to have like, here's a checklist of the things they need to know how to do on their own, and they're going to test out, and there's going to be compensation changes associated with different levels of skill, and you're going to get them from a technician 0 to a technician 1 or whatever.
Yeah.
Technician 1 or whatever. Like you come up with a system to systematize bringing in basically nobodies on the topic of what you're doing. Everyone's important. Everyone's a somebody. But like in terms of skill and capabilities, you bring in nobodies and turn them into somebodies. And I feel like if every organization at the macro level had that mentality, I feel like we very quickly could solve a lot of the labor issues, and the few nuanced ones that people don't notice are necessary.
Yeah.
We could solve later. But I feel like, especially in this town, there's so many people running around without jobs or working in jobs that don't pay anything.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how about you take that person out of where they are, invest some time and money into them, and get them into a job where they can make a good living, and see what happens to them and their generations that come after them.
Well, like maintenance or anything that is viewed as a cost center, training has fallen in that same category of this is stuff we don't need to pay for anymore, right? Like we should expect whoever we hire to show up on day one and know everything. And that just doesn't exist anymore. So I'm gonna come back to that, but I want to circle back to one thing you said that was really like powerful. So treating your inputs as gold, yes, you absolutely should, right? And so if you're sitting there trying to wonder like, well, what are my inputs, especially the ones that are valuable, you need to understand how the business operates, right? It doesn't matter if you're maintenance manager, even maintenance supervisor, right? Or ops manager, ops supervisor, or whoever you are. I think from a leadership perspective, from top down, everybody needs to understand how does the business make money, right? How do we produce money? And then for key leaders, let's say department heads, they also need to be able to understand how much does it cost us to make $1? So a cost of goods sold, right? How, like going back to your piece of, I could sell these widgets for $25 a pop, but how much money is it going to cost me to make the widget and then make money because we invested in everything else that goes with it? And so I think something I've seen, something that you've alluded to, and Trent, I'm sure you could speak on it too, is we're not giving the visibility to the floor leaders to understand that. Mm-hmm. And I can see it from both sides of the street, right? Like I could totally see some maintenance manager, crusty as all crusty could be, like, I don't need to know that shit. I'm just here to fix things. Well, cool, dude. You're not wrong. But like, what if we are able to enable you through just a little bit of knowledge that you now understand, why this PM cycle is important, or preventing this failure from occurring over and over again is more than just a headache and overtime on you. This is where it affects the bottom line of the business. And you've been bitching and moaning, I need to hire 4 more maintenance techs. Well, if you figure out the root cause of this failure and keep it from happening again because it's going to open up the cash flow to all of this, I can get you your 4 more maintenance technicians or whatever it is that you need. And so this goes back to a buddy of ours, George Williams. He owns a company called Reliability X. I quote him, I think, every podcast now. But he was on a podcast and somebody asked George, hey, George, for the viewers out there, when they call you, what do they need in order to make the first phone call good with you? And George's response was, you need to know your business. You need to know how your business makes money, regardless of who you are. And that's why I bring that up, is because it is the most important piece. Like I'd love to do a survey, and maybe you guys could tell off the rip, right? Like how many department heads know what a cost of goods sold is for their plant?
Almost none of them.
Right?
It's single-digit percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hardly anybody.
They wouldn't even know where to start to gather that data,
Yeah.
which is, again, where the disconnect is. Because, if organizations that talk about money, it's almost like families. Families that are afraid of money and afraid to talk about it always seem to be broke, right? Mm-hmm. Families that freely discuss money and see it as a tool and of what it really is seem to be doing, better, or at least they're got their stuff together. Maybe they're not wealthy, but like they have systems and processes in place that they function just fine, and you don't see them in turmoil all the time financially.
Yeah.
There's 2 books I'm referencing a lot of my comments here that I think are good necessary reads to accomplish what you're talking about. One is called Losing the Signal. It's a red book. It's the story of the rise and fall of BlackBerry. Fascinating read.
Yeah, I bet that is.
I hate reading, and I was able to get through it in like a day and a half. So like,
Nice.
for those of you who are like
It's
me,
a gripper.
it's like real, yeah. And then it's called Turn This Ship Around, and that one is more like for more of the organizations that I was discussing, which I think at a macro level, when I look around my own country and like just the way that things operate in these organizations are a symptom of that. I feel like in a lot of ways we're a version of both, right? Losing the signal is what basically tells the story of like becoming the great one and then losing it, right? Like and all the symptoms and the causes and the things that were going on internally that led to like an organization that was once lauded as the greatest, to be uprooted in a matter of months, basically.
Yeah.
And then Turn the Ship Around is the story of a naval vessel that was not meeting expectations and wasn't able to function properly, and taking all the same people it had when the new commander took command and turning it into the highest performing ship in the Navy. Yeah. With all the same people and all the same inputs, right? And like that's a leadership conversation. It's almost like that's a leadership success story, like a leader coming in and fixing something, and then losing the signal would be like the building and it falling apart in bad leadership. And I think to what you're saying, like it's a macro level problem that we're dealing with, because a lot of the people that built the world that we now operate are gone. Yeah. Whether physically or just they're no longer in the business. Yeah. And as companies and newcomers are acquiring these businesses, there needs to be a way to train the business, because again, like how a business makes money, any finance guy, anyone with an MBA can pull the numbers and tell you where like what each line on the P&L means. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, at least in manufacturing, they understand like how those numbers are generated, right? Yeah. And what levers to pull, because they may not be the same as like a bank. Yeah. If the levers a bank pulls to make money are different than the levers that a manufacturing company would pull.
Well, so you're right, and so the second thing I wanted to touch on, and man, you just like teed it up perfect for me, and you didn't even know it. Why is there this gap of, like you said, apprenticeships becoming the last resort, right? Like when it once was the starting point. I think being a dad, now we're all dads here, right? Like instinctually you want something better for your children, right? Naturally. And that's cool. So I can see, if we play the make-believe world or the what-if game, which is one of my favorite games ever, going back into the lens of, let's say, 1960s version of my dad's dad, and, who, let's say, was a tradesman, worked his ass off, provided for his family, made a living, and now he's 40 or 50, and he's saying to himself, man, I've worked my ass off for this. I don't want my kid to have to work as hard as I did to be as successful, which is rooted in a good place, right? It's rooted in a really good place. But what's happened in the inverse is we've now created to the second and third generation of that mindset of you have to have a 4-year degree to be successful. No ifs, ands, or buts. And if we question that statement, it's because then you're a failure, which is so dumb. And then the second piece to it is you now, like you said, all these kids or people have insane college debt. And the expectation is, oh, well, now that I have this degree, I can land into a middle management position at XYZ company. And now I can make money. And so you have somebody who's educated, perhaps with no experience, and they're assuming they can just start making money day one. And the brutal reality is hard work is required no matter where you go, right? There is nothing flipping handed to you. You got to earn it, except if you're the 1% trust fund babies out there, right? Like maybe you do just get things handed to you. I don't know what that life's like, but I find it interesting because like we have this dynamic shift now, and so like that ripple effect has then caused companies to say, oh, well, we can just cut our training budget because people are going to college. They should be teaching the same thing at every engineering school in America. False. That's not happening. Because again, like you said, they're not teaching people how to respond to like when things break or when failures occur or when the train comes off the rails and what do you do to keep it back on the rails. You're teaching people how to operate in this very narrow margin, and anything outside of that error is just utter chaos. So I find that interesting. And yes, like apprenticeships should be the first way forward, and we should be encouraging organizations to build their own culture instead of hiring their own culture. And what I mean by that is, like either one of you said, you can just hire anybody to come work for your company. How is that going to affect its culture? How is it going to affect the process? How is it going to affect the dynamics? How is it going to affect the team? Cool. You as the leader or the business owner, you should be the most invested in how the culture is built and is maintained. And I'm trying to think who I was talking to. Oh, I can't remember his name, but I met him at a conference a couple weeks or months ago. I can't remember his name. Anyway, he's basically a business consultant, and so he walked into this business, and he had the sales guy who was a hot shot, right? Like brought in 60% of the annual revenue, but he was cancerous to everybody else within the organization. And so this guy spent 2 weeks with the business owner and said, "You need to fire that guy, like today. He's got to go." And of course, he's like, "Dude, he's my rainmaker. Why am I going to get rid of my rainmaker, man?" He's like, "Your rainmaker is succeeding because he's stepping on everybody's throats, and nobody wants to be here anymore. You get rid of him, the other 5 who are underperforming are all of a sudden going to rise to the occasion and do better than this guy." Simple. It's like you're invested in that guy because he's making you money. But flipping that back to like the manufacturing perspective of, you need to identify this culture piece, but you also need to give these people, let's call it the North Star, that they need to stay focused on. And I bet it would only take 30 minutes at most for the lead finance person at any given plant to sit with all of the department heads and say, "Here's our annual revenue. Here's our deficit. Let's break down our cost of goods sold. How much money is it costing us to make $1? And how does this pertain to your department? And if you're able to ship up your department a little bit, here's what these numbers could look like."
But what happens in real life is they just hand them a budget, and as long as they stay within their budget, they must be doing a good job, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And that hence the lack of a feedback loop.
Yeah.
That's the difference between accountability and responsibilities. Accountability means you can count it. Like
Yeah.
the person accountable to it may not necessarily know anything about it, but they can take literally an accounting of what the KPIs, right? They're the ones that tally everything. The person that's responsible is capable of responding and actually doing something about it. And I think a lot of times, especially in leadership, people misunderstand not just the definition of the word, but misunderstand the roles and responsibilities of the different leaders. And what I see happening in corporate America as a whole, and I can only speak to the manufacturing side of things,
Sure.
is like there's a genuine disconnect because like, it's almost like the people that are accountable are just looking for your numbers.
Yeah.
And then you're giving them the numbers and they go and relay that up the food chain. And then what comes back down is it's not good enough, right? And so then that shit rolls downhill. And every time, every layer it goes through, it gets meaner and it gets watered down, but also gets more blunt and less personalized, if you would. And to the point where you're the operator on the floor being told just to work faster. It's like your machine only moves so fast. You only move so fast. Like you might bust ass for an hour or two, but like the reality is humans can only produce so much at a time.
Yeah.
Hence the argument for automation. Like it can be more consistent over time, like the conveyor every 19 seconds hitting, right? But that disconnect, I think, causes a lot of our issues because I can't remember what book it is, but I want to say it was. I'll think of it in a minute. But basically, the like an owner. No one in the organization should be more than 2 layers away from the customer, the end user, right? So like if you're CEO and there's like you never talk to a customer, you're disconnected, right? Like Walmart, Sam Walton or whatever. Like he built Walmart back when it was a good company and it was good for the world. Like he literally would travel to all his stores and he would interact with his lowest level people, like his employees and customers, and like hear them bitch and moan about whatever was going wrong at the company, and then he would gather information and then he would go back to his board or back to his leaders and he would make changes based on the data he got from the front lines, if you would. And in manufacturing, the problem is you might say your manufacturing team is like a customer. You need to be intimately involved. Like again, you don't need to. Intimate is obviously a loose term in this conversation, but like you need, as a senior leader, you need to know what's going on the floor. You need to be aware of what's happening, what problems they're solving, what they're facing, not just the numbers. You need to know where the numbers are coming from and why you're hitting those numbers. So when you're accounting for those up the food chain, you can speak to what's going on and why, and ideally, if you're a good leader, your role is to provide air cover from above, but also to or leverage resources. Like, you're supposed to recognize what your team is really struggling with. You're detached enough where you're not like emotionally attached to the machine that won't run, right? Like you're detached enough to keep a clear head and to look at it from a bird's eye view, but you're close enough to recognize what's going on, gather the data from all the different people, and then figure out what tool or what resource is missing and go and get that. Use your valuable time and your resources to go get that for your team, bring it in, and let that help your team get to where they're going. But again, that I've just never seen that in my game. I've seen a few good leaders along the way that have done that successfully. And when I look at their teams and the results they've created, those results are still being maintained by who's replaced them. Does that make sense? Like they took a business from 10 to 100, and they got lauded for it. They got promoted, and they went on to do other great things. And when you look at that business today, it's been 15 years, and it's still just sitting at 100. And everybody that's been involved since has just been trying to maintain the 100.
Yeah.
And nobody's come in to say, hey, what if we went to 1,000, right? And
So first off, if you are looking to improve your situation, manufacturing and the skilled trades is the greatest vehicle to do that.
Yeah.
The apprenticeship model is proven. It works. The companies who do it and do it well see a great return, but you were talking about being able to educate on a higher level. A lot of companies stop at the hourly workforce.
Yeah.
But they don't replicate that same apprenticeship type model throughout the organization for frontline leaders, middle managers. If you come in with an MBA or a GED, I don't care. You probably need to go through the same training that is applicable to your business.
Yeah.
And the greatest leaders, the handful that you've been talking about that I've interacted with, are the ones who are taking ownership of the culture, taking ownership of the communication, and taking ownership of the clarity.
Yeah.
If you can drive all those points home to everybody in the organization in a way that they can understand it, because the person who's running the dock, they don't care the same way that you do. They have different inputs to make the business successful as opposed to the maintenance tech or the operator on the floor. What matters to them, and communicate it in a way that it matters to them. The best leaders do an exceptional job of that. And I think that's where we're seeing this lapse of we get, caught up in you have an engineering degree, you have an MBA. I don't have a master's degree. I came up working on equipment. But just like something that George Williams would say, you have to understand your business. You have to know what your losses are, what's the cost of downtime, what drives the lagging indicator.
Yeah.
What are all these things, these inputs, the leading indicators that produce the lagging indicators? If you can't explain that, that's probably why you think you have a leadership problem.
Yep.
And it starts with the top.
Yeah.
If the top guy can't explain why we're having numerous defects, we're not meeting our numbers, and our downtime is at an all-time high, it's probably his fault because he doesn't understand his business, and he can't communicate the way to get out of the ditch and break the cycle of doom.
Yeah.
Everything lives and dies with leadership.
You're absolutely right. I attended a debate for a Greenville city election a couple years ago. And the the question was asked, what makes you good for this job? And I literally laughed the hardest physically in the room. Like, everybody looked at me awkwardly because I laughed so hard out loud. The response from the incumbent was, I have an engineering degree, so that means I have the ability to make complex decisions. I was like, squeeze me? Just because you have an engineering degree gives you the authority to make complex decisions on the city? I was like, how far removed could you be from your constituents?
Have you driven on any of our roads lately?
Yeah. When's the last time you've driven down Pete Hollis Boulevard or Woodside Avenue in downtown Greenville? It was unreal. But the reason I bring that up is because you're right. Just because you have an engineering degree or an MBA doesn't give you the necessary tools to understand how this particular business operates, right? And I think for me, like a common theme here that we haven't said this word yet, but what makes maybe some of these good leaders or a key element to all of it is curiosity, right? It's not just understanding how things work, but just continuing to be more curious about every single aspect of what you're trying to accomplish to try to get that to that desired outcome, right? Like being comfortable in discovering the unknown. I think there's a lot of people that are terribly afraid of the unknown. And I guess I've just failed enough in my life to where it's very, comfortable for me these days. So I really don't care about the unknown. I'm happy to jump into the water head first, but it's interesting. So, through the conversations, not only in the podcast that we've had recently, but with you guys today, like I keep telling myself, like, guys, I feel like not the solution to the problem, but the things we're talking about, they're not that complex. They're still simple. We talked about this on your episode. It is a lot more simple than we realize, but we get lost in the complexity of it, right? Or not the complexity. We get lost in trying to make it complicated in our own way. And so it's silly to me because, when like with you today, Ian, or when I had Matt Knuth on the podcast last time, I was hoping we would get like, nuts and bolts answers to how do we solve this problem. And the reality is like, maybe there are some nuts and bolts answers to certain problems, but the reality is there's too many variables, and it all begins with leadership and it ends with leadership and how we build that culture and how we make it successful so we can go out and have a successful project completion. You're going back to talking about a customer doesn't know what they don't know, and then the machine builder or whoever, the integrator, if they don't ask the right questions, everybody's set up for failure. Now, I know part of people are going to say, well, what are the right questions you ask? Nobody knows the right questions to ask. The questions to ask are rooted in curiosity, and that is, okay, you want a machine to do 5-in-1 packaging? Why? Why do you want to do 5-in-1 packaging? Oh, well, if I can have it do 5-in-1, I can produce XYZ more, make X more money, and I can mothball these 3 production lines, and I can reduce my head count by 25%. And then that integrator or whoever, whether it's a CMMS consultant like myself or anybody else, needs to be able to tell that person, it's a good idea. It's not going to work, right? It's not going to work. Yep. This is a little out of touch. And here's why. Because going back to the reliability with or in automation, going back to the 5-in-1 machine, it's all well and good that you want it to do this, but is it going to be able to do it consistently and reliable? And if you reduce your head count, who's going to take care of the equipment? Who's going to be there not only for when it breaks, but like to set the machine up, input the products, components, everything else that goes with it, right? Like their focus is increasing profit margins, which all well and good, but we're looking at the wrong levers, right? We're looking in the wrong areas. We're looking where to cut instead of where to improve. And what you guys were talking about before we began was not every company has to have a continuous improvement department, right? And so I want to touch on that a little bit. Trent, can you kick us off on like, what does that mean, right? Like, what does it mean that you don't have to have a continuous improvement department?
So I think people get really hyped up and excited about tools and certifications, and I'm going to go get Lean Six Sigma Black Belt certified, and I'm going to be able to teach Kaizen, and I'm going to learn about PDCA and all the things, and I'm going to go and get all these certificates I can hang on my wall in the office. That's great. But where you miss it is that it starts with leadership. Mm-hmm. The leader has to understand how to communicate the cost of waste and why waste is bad for the company, why waste prevents us from hiring more help, why waste prevents us from being able to automate more, why waste prevents us from getting a full bonus, why waste prevents us from doing A, B, C, whatever it is. It all lives and dies with leadership taking ownership and understanding that it's their role to communicate the why. Mm-hmm. You don't need a department. You don't need a billboard. You don't need a banner. You don't need a sign. You need a culture. It starts there. How do you eliminate waste? How do you identify waste? And the people at the front line, the hourly workforce, has to be educated on how to eliminate waste. It doesn't need to be a middle manager who says, you're the continuous improvement manager now.
Because nobody takes that person seriously.
Right.
Like they're just a joke. You're just like.
And they're the fall guy too. Whenever it goes wrong, it's their fault.
It's like, well,
Yeah.
we have a guy for that, therefore it must be fixed. Like doing something must equal doing enough, right?
Yeah.
Like even do like a lot of effort. And this is obviously hyperbole. Like working really hard must equal the same thing as getting something done. And I feel like in a lot of like upper management, like in a lot of initiatives in corporate America, that's what it seems to be. Is like, oh, we were struggling with this thing, and we think we need to have fixed. So what I did is I created this program, and I put a person in charge of it. Therefore, it must be fixed.
Yeah.
I think to add on to your comment is there's a gentleman that I interact with a lot. Has been a very dear mentor of mine, and he often says a phrase that like rings in my ears. He says that there is understandable and there's acceptable. It's understandable that you were late to work today because your dog died or whatever, but it's unacceptable that you allowed that to get in the way of being there. That's a stupid example. It's all I can think of. But like the point is, and on the topic of leadership, the problem with leadership in manufacturing in America is that it's that extreme ownership. The ownership of the problem is not. It doesn't seem like senior leaders in the organizations that I've been a part of are held accountable for the same things that I am.
Yeah.
And to your point, like if you want a culture of continuous improvement, every layer of the culture needs to have that mentality. It needs to be pervasive. It needs to be throughout the entire organization.
Yeah.
You should see your manager working on continuous improvement projects for their team and their processes and so on and so forth. You should see macro level ones for the entire plant working their way down to you, just seeing that there's a problem or there's a thing that needs to be changed so that each individual operator feels a need to do that. And maybe you put somewhere for them to capture their wins and losses so that they can, or their wins, we'll say. So you have a way of recognizing the good ones and continuing to reinforce the idea. But I think to your point, it's to have anyone who's ever worked in an organization where there's a continuous improvement manager, I bet you nobody in the organization takes that person seriously. Yeah. And if you actually were to remove the human element from it and measure effectiveness, you would find it to be at best 0. And most likely negative because it's taking energy and efforts that otherwise could be put into things that are useful. Or if each person just picked up the trash around him, the world would be a cleaner place, right? Yeah. That's the culture that we should find in organizations, but unfortunately, that's not what we actually do find.
Yeah. People overcomplicate it, but what gets rewarded gets repeated.
Yeah.
So on the front line, if you can show them, hey, here's what we want, here's what we need, here's what helps the business thrive, that helps you as a leader give people an opportunity to have joy in their work. Deming said that people have a right to joy in their work. Yeah. And it doesn't require a pizza party. It doesn't require you to have a family day with blow-ups for the kids. It requires respect and understanding that these people are at the tip of the spear. They are at the point of friction, and it's your job to help them understand how they can improve their situation, their circumstance, and the job they do every day. At every level, you have to understand what's the cost of downtime. Why is it important to torque that fastener to the appropriate torque spec? What's the downstream effect of you not doing things according to the standard work? Yeah. And it's uncomfortable because you can't get a certificate for being a good communicator. You can't get an award for being able to solve problems,
right?
Yes.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's interesting, not that it's the most common, but it continues to surprise me, but not at the same time on how giant companies, let's say whether they're publicly traded or Fortune 500, are able to survive and continue for how long as they have and currently will with a total lack of standardization of, let's say, whether it's processes or improvements or how they just operate. Like, I guess the joke is you just get so big the train never stops moving, right? Like it just keeps moving. But I just find it interesting how, going back to a organization that utilizes the software we consult on, they've standardized facilities maintenance across all of 98 the facilities of these data centers that they own. which is cool, and they're able to use technology to leverage that. So now you can hire anybody off the street and tuck them under the wing of that guru you were just talking about and say, hey, here's how we do things this way, and let's give you the foundational knowledge, and here's where you can find it on the iPad. But this is how we manage every data center across the globe. And all of that information can be found in that repository. So like I think that's just a cool way of enabling it. But the standardization approach of how we do, let's say, work and business and understand business is core and key. Well, we've only got a few more minutes left. So I've been trying to like noodle for the last minute and a half how we're going to bring this one home a little bit. So I'm gonna kick the ball in y'all's court. How do we end this thing, boys? Because we've talked a lot about great stuff, how to improve suppliers, and I think lightly touched in like reliability with automation, but it's just so simple. We don't need to dive deeper into how do you make automation reliable. Well, you need to understand the inputs, the process, the control, what's the desired outcome, right? Like there's some very small things that are easy to do. But as we close out for our viewers, man, Ian, Trent, how should we do this? I don't know. I'm putting y'all on the spot. And you don't have to come up immediately. We've got 5 minutes before we got to get kicked out of here. So
I think everything that we've talked about today has a common theme of leadership and being brilliant in the basics.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot. Being brilliant in the basics.
A lot. That's something I continually talk about.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm going to stop you there. I'm sorry. I had a business meeting yesterday with my dad, who owns a business, and our CFO, and we had a subject line snapshot for you, Ben, strategic planning for 2026. And my dad said, okay, well, what's our strategic plan for next year? And I said, getting better at what we're currently doing. And that's it. We're not adding anything to the table. We're getting better at what we currently have on the plate, and we're going to get really freaking good at it this year. So anyway.
Yeah. And I don't want people to get caught up in the title. You need manager or VP or director or whatever to take ownership of that leadership position. You can lead well without a formal authority. Mm-hmm. Being brilliant in the basics there. And if you're just a project engineer or if you're a lead maintenance technician, whatever your role is, if you consistently spend time on the tools, you're going to get better. You're going to become brilliant in the basics. There is no shortcut. You have to do the hard work. You will get there with time. Yeah. But you have to repeatedly, rinse and repeat, do the work to be brilliant in the basics.
Yeah, I would say that there's
there's
never been a better time for a hard charger to get ahead in the world. I mean,
100%.
Especially in this game. I mean, if you're willing to show up every day and do exactly what he just said, like, you roll up your sleeves, put in the time, what you'll witness is as the folks that built our industry, age out and retire, there's going to be a power vacuum. There's going to be a vacuum for people who know how to do stuff. And there's going to be things that have to get relearned, unfortunately. We wish it was not the case. But every organization's got to relearn some hard lessons again. Yeah. And I think if you're the individual who's willing to roll up their sleeves and put in the work, I would say if you still have the benefit of having those old timers in your plant who did build it, even if you have better ways of doing it, you should shadow them, learn every single thing you can from them on how they're doing it now. So then you can apply what you know and all the technologies that you're aware of and the skills that you have into making what they used to do better, faster, stronger, whatever, more repeatable. So I don't want to diminish the old timers in any way. I'm just stating, like, if you're a young person who's willing to put in the work, you can under the radar, especially without a title. Without a title, you can get away with a lot. So go and learn and go and put your hands on it and like have people teach you. Maintain that student mindset. One of my neighbor used to tell me, he said, Ian, always stay green, because after green, once you turn ripe, next comes death, right? You always talk about fruits or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But he's like, basically stay a student, stay green and stay willing to learn. And I would say, like, in this industry, like, I see so many people moving up very, very quickly in their respective professions or their crafts because they're simply willing to show up and put in the work and grind, and eventually they know all the stuff that everyone uses, or they're the most knowledgeable on the floor, and they keep showing up, and like no one's ever going to fire you for that.
Exactly. I was just going to say,
you're not going to get fired for showing up and trying hard.
You as an individual within your organization, first off, it costs you nothing to go and learn from others within your organization. But if you had to ask, what does it cost the company for you to go and learn from others? Nothing. It makes the company money. Right? Like, your mindset should be, well, if I'm not doing my job day in and day out that the company is losing all the money. That goes back to learning and understanding how your business operates. But it is only going to benefit you and your company if you go out and learn from everybody as much as you can. You don't have to be knowledgeable in absolutely everything, but you need to be passionate and curious enough to go learn about the things that are going to affect your sphere and how you can help influence that in a positive manner for everybody else. And it's easy to get consumed in typical human behaviors: selfishness, complacency, tiredness, laziness. It's always a fight. It's always work. It's always hard work. And I think the route we can take out of this today is, as our old buddy Brian Bieski says, just do the work. Show up and do the work. Boys, this was fun. Thanks for being here today. Real quick, Ian, tell everybody who you are, how they can get a hold of you for anything that you or may not do. I say may or may not do, but we didn't get into like who are you and what do you do for a living. But if you had to give your 30-second who am I and what do I do?
Ian Rush. The easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn, most likely.
Yeah.
You can figure out where I work and how to get a hold of me there. Yeah.
Okay.
I do a happy hour here in Greenville.
Yeah.
Anyone who wants to go, just DM me and I'll get you an invite.
Cool. Trent, I say I'm not going to do it for you because we did it last time. So I'll reference it back to the old episode. You can find both of these jokers on LinkedIn, right? And both forces to be reckoned with within not only our immediate community in the upstate of South Carolina, but just, up and coming individuals in the industry as a whole, right? You and I have talked about this, I think. And you just mentioned it too, right? Like we are hard chargers, us three, including Ben over here sitting on the sidelines today, right? Like if you're willing to show up, do the work, be curious, be humble about it, you're going to shoot to the top quickly, but you're also going to earn the trust and credibility and respect, even if you don't know everything. And that's what's more important versus being a yes man. So thanks, boys. Appreciate it. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks.
See you on the next one. Thanks, guys.